And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That is Tom Fornelli. That is Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson. It's a Wednesday, so we're going to dive into the big old bag of mail. But before we get to some of those mailbag questions, which include, some inquiries into what we should expect for a Power 5 team that is trying to reboot the roster. What are you looking for the gradual growth along the way? Florida and Washington, who's been more disappointing this season. And then on that note, some expectations for what might happen now that Dan Mullen has started to make some staff changes with a little bit of pressure on him in Gainesville. But the first and sort of big topic for today is an activity that can only be done once a year. This is, like an astronomical event. There's a very small window where you can get outside and you can see this comet known as Bowl or No Bowl passing by in the sky, because we are at this awesome point where so many teams, the teams we're going to talk about today, I think all of them are right at 9 games. One of them is at 10 if we end up getting to them. 3 games left to play. Pretty much everybody's either 5-4 or 4-5. And so every single fan is doing this math in their head. And it's interesting because sometimes you go into the season and you are thinking that bowl game, like that is going to be a good goal for us to have. And that is one sort of tone and backdrop for bowl or no bowl. And then there's other times where it's like, man, we were kind of hoping to be competing for a conference title. Why are we sitting here on November 10th sweating bowl or no bowl? So we're going to go from both ends of the spectrum here. We have a lot. If you're watching on YouTube, youtube.com/cover3, we'll be providing you with some of the information that we will also be calling out here on the show, including teams' records and remaining schedule, as those are some of the big operative questions here in bowl or no bowl. But I want to begin with a homer one, because I'm going to pull the curtain back. Bud Elliott wanted to strike this team from the list of debate. And I want to know, I'm going to turn it to Danny, because I know that Danny's got the belief, judging by the helmet in the background and the hat on his head.
That is a sweet hat, by the way.
It's a very sweet hat. Is it like a new,
No, I got this. It's just a Nike. I got it at the bookstore. I was there in the summer when my daughter golf camp went. I kind of liked it. Just a little old school throwback. So you putting us on the spot for bowl or no bowl for Florida State?
For Florida State, right off the jump.
Now, are we under the assumption that it's going to be the 6 games minimum, or do you get sort of a 5-7 potential in play? Because
do you really think APR? I don't think APR is going to be coming through to save this Florida State program.
I mean, 2 years ago, like, this is the one thing that Willie did well, is like he actually made his kids go to class, because under Jimbo, they just were not going to class, and they were like a couple kids away from being like bowl ineligible due to the APR, which just doesn't happen unless you're like a severely underfunded school. So they've done some APR improvement. I don't suspect they are APR eligible.
So Florida State is 3-6. They play Miami this week. I think that game is winnable. They play at Boston College. I think that game is winnable. And at Florida, we will get to the Gators here in just a second. I think that depending on where the headspace of that Gators team is at, I think it's winnable. Those are 3 individual events, of which I think that Florida State has a coin flip try. I understand stringing them all together, the odds are unlikely. But do you see it, Danny?
So you said they're all winnable. They're also no doubt losable, right?
Yes.
And the probabilities probably would say that they lose one of those. I think they have an outstanding chance to win this weekend. But then, I wouldn't be surprised if it's cold at BC and they're feeling good about themselves that they would lose that game, like a surprising loss, and then come back and beat Florida. It's just the inconsistency, the up and down with its team. They've been all over the map. So with that being said, even though I am wearing my gear, but it is because it's Miami week and it's hate week and we got to support the Noles, I will say that the Noles do not make a bowl.
I'm going to agree. Yeah. There's a path.
It's just kind of stating the obvious.
They've made market improvement this year. I think they were 88th in SP Plus last year. Now they're 48th. That's a good jump. Some of the wins haven't fallen their way. I think somebody should lose their job, probably a coordinator, over the end of the Jacksonville State game, because that's the deciding game here. That's why they're not going bowling. They lost to freaking Jacksonville State. Miami, this new quarterback they have, Tyler Van Dyke, has been absolutely on fire. and FSU will give up explosive plays through the air with the best of them. That's kind of the one thing this defense does poorly. Boston College getting its quarterback back, Dracovic, really hurts their chance. If they still had Grossell in there, I would probably be inclined to say closer to a bowl. At Florida, that's a real wild card for me because you don't know, has Florida quit? Against South Carolina, it looked like they did, but they also had the flu. So, like, what is Florida's true level? Will they actually be up for that game? I mean, that's a game you can go in there and win. I'm not going to pick you to do it right now, but, like, if Florida's checked out, FSU is still playing hard. I will give them that. So, this is possible. It's just not very likely.
No bowl also. But it is great for narrative purposes because it allows us to turn the page and our attention to Gainesville, where Florida is 4-5 here, headed in to week 11 of the college football season. A Florida team that, sure, we had slotted behind Georgia, but we didn't expect to have them featured on bowl or no bowl. Now this week, they are against Samford at home. Then they will go to Columbia to play the Alpha Nerd in Missouri, a Missouri defense that, you know, has provided lots of opportunities for us to take advantage of this season. And then, as we just mentioned, the final game of the season against Florida State, that game being in Gainesville, need to win 2 out of 3, sitting at 4-5. So Samford, Missouri, Florida State, bowl or no bowl for the Florida Gators.
Bowl. I mean, I think Samford, we just chalk up that's a win. If it's not,
but it would be so funny.
It would be hilarious, but it's a win. So you're asking, can they split at Mizzou, Florida State at a minimum? Yes. Unless, you know, like Bud was mentioning, talking about Florida State, unless they're completely checked out and quitting and all that kind of stuff, Mizzou defensively is just a mess. It has been for a while. I don't see them being able to slow down this Florida team often enough to beat them, although it is on the road. So anything could happen. It's like an afternoon kind of game. Something strange could happen. And then that Florida State game is a rivalry game, and things can get weird. It's just, I can't imagine this team only going 1-2 down this stretch instead of winning at least 2 of these games.
Yeah, I have them at like 90-something%. And that's just straight numbers. I think you should probably reduce that slightly to account for the possibility that they have quit or that there's something more cultural going on there than the numbers are picking up. They should beat Samford. It is interesting that Missouri is favored over the team that just beat Florida by 4 scores. South Carolina's a dog this weekend. So
I think at Missouri, based on situation and like if the South Carolina loss is going to show us a new floor that I didn't think was capable, I think that's absolutely a losable game for the Gators.
And I got to tell you, I really do not think Dan Mullen will be fired this year because his buyout doesn't reduce like around Christmas time. So there's no reason to wait. His buyout's the same next year as it is this year. If they were going to do it, they wouldn't just fired some coordinators. They would have just ripped the Band-Aid right then and there. Like Virginia Tech, it's very obvious, to me at least, that they're waiting to fire Fuente because his buyout does reduce a couple weeks into December. You know, with Mullen, there's not that going on there. If they don't make a bowl, though,
fire.
I think that he'll be gone. If they seriously, like, if you can't make a bowl with this schedule, there's something wrong.
Struggle against Samford, lose at Missouri, and have Florida State beat you at home is the recipe for how Dan Mullen gets fired.
Or lose sideways to Florida State, which I don't think happens. But like if you get
like
manhandled at home,
like be 6-6, but lose that game at home badly by the Seminoles.
Yeah, I think so. Especially if Florida State doesn't win against like there's a lot that could unfold. Here's the thing, because I want to say Florida's a lock, like they went out, and the reason being, I think the game was, I think they do have some excuses, right? They did have the flu. They did have a lot of players out. Anthony Richardson was hurt. And then I'm like, well, they're going to show up for a rivalry game. I also thought they'd show up for the LSU game. And then all of a sudden LSU comes back. And maybe that's more about LSU being better than we thought because they played Bama pretty tough. But I feel like in a rivalry game, like Tom was saying, I think you'll get Florida's best no matter what happens because these dudes talk trash. They see each other, all off. Like it's just a rivalry game and it's at home. And I would think they would get their best foot forward. So I'll say bowl for the Gators. And I think Dan Mullen survives. I just think he enters next season with that seat being hot.
Tell me about the Florida, like, booster culture community. Like, do they have the type of people around the program that can pass around the hat and quickly gather together funds? Or is this a different situation where the university has a lot of resources, but in terms of being able to cobble together money from a couple prominent boosters, it's not exactly the same type of setup? Does that question make sense? I hope I'm
It
not.
does. Yeah. No, they definitely have people who could. Now, one interesting dynamic here is something. By the way, if you guys listen to the Swamp 24/7 podcast, I thought the episode Thomas Goldcamp did was absolutely great. So like that's a really, really good show. Pretty insightful. Check that out. Florida for a while like didn't update its facilities, and recently they've been kind of beating the drum and making sure people give them a lot of money. And when you ask people for money for new facilities, and they're building that beautiful new football facility, people do expect certain results, and they want to make sure they're investing in a product that is good. If you want to invest in our product, show ads at 247sports.com is how you do it. We bring it each and every day. Even though I'm sick, I'm all hopped up on the Sudafed right now. But one thing that was interesting, I was going through our podcast reviews, and there was one for Swamp 24/7 that basically said, hey, in a team meeting after the UGA loss, Mullen ripped the players, coaches, and basically they just quit on him. I don't know how to separate the flu thing from Florida allegedly quitting on him. We're going to see that these next 3 weeks. Like if he's lost the team, we'll find out. Probably shouldn't cite an Apple podcast review as fact.
No,
that's theory, of course.
No, keep it going.
Yeah, actually, anything I've ever reported came from a comment section or a message board.
Also, strong correlation. I put this on Twitter. I looked at all of our 24/7 sports podcasts. There's a couple good negative reviews with constructive criticism or, hey, maybe the show's just not my flavor. Most of them are really positive. The ones that are idiotic, it's like a 1-to-1 correlation with misspelling the word lose. It's like LOOS, LOOSE. Yeah, I'm like, okay, this is
losers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that where you are digging is where we find the truth. And since we are the CFP Anon podcast, this is part of our journey. Okay, what about Missouri? Oh, go ahead, Tom.
Oh no, I was just gonna make a joke because I think Andy Staples is joining us.
Oh, he's joining does he want to be the CFP Anon shaman?
He mentioned yesterday that
he's got a tinfoil hat.
The only Michigan is ahead of Michigan State was to give us something to talk about for the week.
The army is growing.
Staples.
All right. Let's go with Missouri real quick. 4-5 right now, and Missouri's at the center of this because South Carolina at home, the game that Bud just mentioned where Missouri is favored, Florida at home, as we just mentioned, and then the rivalry game at Arkansas. That's a Friday game during the Thanksgiving weekend. So South Carolina and Florida at home, Arkansas on the road, need to win 2 out of 3. Does Missouri get it done? Bowl or no bowl?
Well, South Carolina is absolutely crucial.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're favored, but I think it's by a point. It's not they're not considered heavy favorites for this game. And I view that as something of a coin flip this weekend, even though it's at home, because like I was saying, when discussing the Florida thing, it's just their defense has been so bad. But I think they can beat South Carolina. If they do, under the assumption, I still don't think they're going bowling.
What about y'all?
Is Basilak out for the year?
No, I think I just saw that he was he's back at practice, but not 100%. And that he maybe there was an insinuation that maybe he could have played against Georgia, but you're like, nah, we don't want to put him out there against Georgia to get killed, which I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think there's a potential he plays, because I do think that's an important piece of this. But even with him, Tom said it, the defense isn't good enough to get it done. That's what worries me, that Florida's rush heavy attack will just come in and lean on them.
I actually bumped their defense up a little bit after the Georgia game, just with how hard they fought in the first half. Georgia kept trying to run the ball up the middle, and Missouri stoned them. Now Georgia still got its points, but it's freaking Missouri's defense. You're looking for small victories here. With that said, I've got them about 25% to make it, which may be the high man on this podcast. I don't know. If you gave me 5-1, I would definitely take it.
I think that to beat the Florida, as the wrinkle here is very interesting. As we mentioned, this weekend is huge. This weekend is also huge for South Carolina. South Carolina is 5-4. Nicest guy in the SEC, just needs one at Missouri, then 2 home games. Hey, don't worry, Shane. 2 teams just coming to your house. It's only Auburn and Clemson. So is it this week or bust? And even if South Carolina loses this week, I mean, could Shane pull one off on a Clemson team that is playing below standard? You know, being able to, channel some of that he was on a Steve Spurrier staff. Is he going to channel some of that Steve Spurrier energy and get the upper hand on Dabo and the Tigers? Because for South Carolina to make a bowl this year, I think would be so far above my expectations and a huge win for the Gamecocks in so many ways. It is awesome that they're sitting here at 5-4. But again, the 3 remaining games at Missouri, home against Auburn, home against Clemson, Gamecocks, Shane Beamer, bowl or no bowl?
Bowl.
Ooh, this week or just in general?
In general, like why can't they beat Auburn? They won't be a double-digit dog at home to Auburn. I don't, not in my numbers at least.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I can't believe at the beginning of the season, I would think that would be opposite situations between South Carolina and Mizzou, where I figured at this point Mizzou would need 1 win in 3, and South Carolina would be looking at a very difficult situation. But I won't be shocked if they get the win this weekend to get it. Even if they don't, like Bud said, I think they can beat Auburn. I think they can beat Clemson. So if they've only got to win one of these 3 games, I think more often than not, South Carolina's going bowling this year.
I think they have to get it done in the next 2 weeks. I don't. Clemson's the one really elite unit left that they have to face, and I don't think they can move the ball on Clemson's defense. Like they won all their coin flip games.
Mm-hmm.
So here's their post-game win expectancies. This is hilarious, right? So East Carolina 100%, or excuse me, 74%. Eastern Illinois 100. So they got those. 0% Georgia, 10% Kentucky. That was actually a close one, but it was kind of lucky that it was that close. 90% Troy, 1% Tennessee, 89% Vanderbilt, which again, kind of crazy given how close that was. 0% Texas A&M, 100% Florida. South Carolina either wins a game or they play like crap. There's no in between really. And they took care of business against the teams that they were slight favorites against. And then they beat Florida, which was huge.
The ECU game is bananas.
Ooh, okay.
Danny, Gamecock hater.
Yeah, I'm gonna say they miss. It wasn't that long ago. Like, do you think it's is this hot or not? Shane Beamer should lose to go take over the Virginia, or should leave, not lose. Shane Beamer should leave to take the Virginia Tech job because he can't win at South Carolina.
That's not hot at all.
I don't think that's
but
hot.
South
Do you think it's
Carolina
realistic?
South
Do you
Carolina
think he
pays
would?
really well. Would you go hire Shane Beamer if you're Virginia Tech? I wouldn't.
I mean,
If they're almost bowling and we're talking about what a job he's done over exceeding expectations.
Are they really better than last year? Like SP Plus has them 75th. What's FPI have them like 80th?
I think that if I'm in charge of Virginia Tech, I'd rather have somebody a little more established right now. I just think because right now where the program is and where it's been, it's like you don't want to, if you screw this up, like your next hire, it could set you back a little bit. So I don't think Shane Beamer would be at the top of their list, but his last name is Beamer, so he's going to be on the list.
I was coming at it from the other way, Danny. Do you think that Shane would do that right now at this?
That was kind of my angle too. Because I mean, and that's where I think like after the A&M game, maybe he's certain, dodging a bullet versus Vanderbilt and realizing, whoa, this is kind of hard where I am. Like, and you see the pulse, like, am I ever going to be able to go toe to toe with Florida and Georgia? But then he beats Florida. So then it's like kind of skewed. But before that, I would have said maybe he would have entertained that idea, but I think he's brought a ton of optimism. And maybe now he's like, hey, maybe I can pull a Spurrier. Maybe I can get to 10, 11 wins and kind of capture some magic. And he's done it with a graduate assistant that wasn't even on the roster that long ago playing quarterback. I mean, it's pretty remarkable the job he's done.
Are they scheduling the right way there for him? I haven't looked at their future schedules. That would be something I would really, really matter. Like this year, Clemson and 3, not difficult non-conference games.
I don't know. That ECU game was a sweat.
Yeah, but like if you're good, that should not be a sweat. You know what I'm saying?
I would be
I guess.
sticking to that philosophy. Clemson and 3 teams that should be favored by at least 3 touchdowns against.
To me,
Mhm.
we have not seen what the new SEC will look like as far as does it go to pods, does it stay at divisions once Oklahoma and Texas come in. My opinion on that job right now is it is a paycheck job. You go there because you're going to make a guaranteed $20 million and you know you can't win.
If Shane Beamer is intrigued by it, not having a personal relationship with him as one of the few media members who does not have a personal relationship with Shane Beamer, I will say that it would surprise me for him to just ditch this program where he's already got, previous ties, even though it is Virginia Tech. Like it would almost be like, all right, maybe not this time, right? Like maybe 3 or 4 years down the line, once Fuente's replacement gets fired, then maybe he entertains it. I mean, wouldn't Big Frank even just come in and be like, Shane's not ready yet? Let's give him some more years, because he's been a coach as an assistant at all the big time programs, right? With Georgia, Oklahoma, the Steve Spurrier staff at South Carolina. He spent some time even up at Virginia Tech, but this is still his first year as a head coach. I think that's significant.
I did find the future schedules, by the way. They are absolutely setting up Shane Beamer to go to bowls. Georgia State, Charlotte, South Carolina State, and of course Clemson. UNC, which is a neutral game. I think that was the second neutral game they had against them. It's like the comeback off what they played 2019, maybe, or 2018.
They played a couple times, yeah.
Furman, Liberty, Clemson, and then the 2024 Old Dominion, Akron, Wofford, Clemson. They are really they're in tune with it. They're doing the right thing. They're not pulling what Arkansas did to Chad Morris.
All right. Well, speaking of Virginia Tech, let's look at those Hokies, because everyone is everyone is hip to the knowledge that Bud has said on this podcast before, and it certainly seems to be the conversation around this program and this job that Justin Fuente's buyout will drop in December. And at that point, there would be the expectation that Virginia Tech would make a move and then begin to look for its next head coach. Now, what kind of impact does that conversation have on the locker room? We will see, as Virginia Tech, which is 4-5, has its last home game this Saturday against Duke. Then after that, the Hokies will be going on the road to Miami, and then they finish the season in the Commonwealth Cup against Virginia. Got to win 2 out of 3, Duke, Miami, Virginia, with your coach on the hot seat. Bowl or no bowl, Virginia Tech.
The math says this is a coin flip. I say it's not happening. I just look at this team right now. You mentioned that schedule. Duke, I think they win. I don't think they're beating either Miami or Virginia on the road. I just look at the way Virginia Tech has played. Like, they started the season with that win over North Carolina. They beat Middle Tennessee. Then they went on the road and they lose to West Virginia. And they beat Richmond. And since then, they've just been a bad team. Like, they hung with Notre Dame, lost, and I felt like it just let the air out, because since then it's been the 3 touchdown loss to Pitt. You lose at home to Syracuse. You lost by 2 to BC last week. Your only win is against the Georgia Tech team that is kind of on your level of being a bad team in the ACC this year. And that's why I think you're going to beat Duke, because that's one of the few teams you can beat. But if you look at how Miami's played the last few weeks with Van Dyke, I think they're getting better. And you look at the way Virginia's played all season, and the fact that game is in Charlottesville, it's a huge rivalry. I know the Hokies will be pumped up for it, but they could also be working under, they could have also just be done with the season by then. Who knows? So I don't think it happens. I do not see this team winning 2 of these 3 games.
I agree. They also have the Burmeister injury, and we don't really know what his status is going to be. That's a common theme so far on a lot of these is QB injury.
It's like, that's how you got here.
Mm-hmm.
In many cases, yeah, exactly.
I'm with you guys. I think they don't. But speaking of Burmeister, I think what might get Justin Fuente fired is what's going on with Hendon Hooker at Tennessee. I watched some film of him the other day. I was just watching him. Man, he throws a good ball. It's pretty. It's effortless. He's making really good decisions with the football. His footwork is there. He's athletic. Like, you couldn't make that work. I don't know.
Check the tape. I thought that Josh Heupel was absolutely nuts for playing Joe Milton over Hendon Hooker. I was like, if they're playing Milton, I'm betting against him every game. Like, you can't play quarterback. And I don't know what, like, is Hendon Hooker the worst practice player in the world?
That's what I was thinking. He's got to be terrible.
Tech picked Braxton Burmeister over him?
Right.
Heupel picked Joe Milton over him? What are we doing? He's got to be terrible in practices, because in games, he throws a really nice ball.
He may be. I think he's actually starting to rise up some of the ranks where Tennessee fans should be worried that if he gets a draft grade, it's going to be first round. Like, I I think the upside on him is exactly what the NFL is looking for. Big arm, can run, can make all the throws. I think he's going to start to gain some traction here. You mentioned the practice player. I don't know if you remember this, Bud. I was the backup to Charlie Ward my sophomore year, and I was competing with a guy named John Stark to be the successor to Charlie Ward. And every other week, we would be the second string. So one week I was second string, the other week John Stark was second string. And it just kind of so happened to fall that and one of the reasons was I was not a great practice player. I was not good in practice. Wasn't that there was something about it. I just needed kind of more pressure, more live action. I just needed that juice flowing. And it just happened to be my week when Charlie Ward was out for 1993, our national championship year. He hurt his ribs and was out for the game against Maryland, and it happened to fall to me. So I got to start, and thankfully I went out and threw 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 350 yards, and even Mark Richt was like, whoa, okay, all right, we feel pretty good about you. And that gave me the leg up. And then the following spring when I'm competing for the starting job again, and I had a leg up because of that game, Coach Bowden had to call me in his office and was like, look, we think you're the starter, but if you want to win the job, we need you to start doing better in practice. And I tried, but it was close to me losing the job because I wasn't great in practice. And then thankfully I got in the field and it kind of worked itself out. So those situations do unfold for whatever reason. And that's got to be the only explanation, because I've wondered several times, imagine what Tennessee could be if they had started Hendon Hooker from day one and they had beat Pitt and they were even more, upside here that Vol fans would be excited about.
I do think a good note from producer Jordan in the private chat to us that, in practice, it's non-contact, which means there's a lot of spring game sacks. And so all the escapability that Hendon Hooker has, the ability to keep his eyes down the field, extend a play, and still be able to hit an explosive, that is definitely going to be something that's going to show up more when you're going up against an opponent that can get their arms around you.
So the lesson is you should start letting your defense tee off on your quarterback in practice.
Well, that was my problem too. I didn't get to showcase the wheels either.
You also had, you had a pretty good defense you're going against there at times.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a big problem too.
Did Mickey Andrews let up a lot in practice?
Well, no. So and the other thing is, because we were so short on depth at quarterback, I didn't get hit. So we had green jerseys on, and that drove Mark Richt nuts. And then actually, when they did take and it was live, I actually played better. I don't know what I don't know.
There's always just been a lot of QBs who need to get hit to really get going.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes I need to know that something is due in an hour if I'm going to do it. It's like procrastination of having a linebacker barreling down on you. I didn't play
live hits. We talk a lot of times, and some of our TV hits are live. Some of them are taped. I don't know about you guys. I feel like I'm always better live than I am taped, because you're like, if I screw up, I know there's just a pressure that kind of it makes you a little more finely tuned.
Absolutely. Speaking of pressure, things are spiraling quickly in the wrong direction at Texas. I mean, we're shedding tears of emotion. So we're trying to fire up our roster on the bus. We are having players head off to the transfer portal. The relationship between coaching staff and roster. Listen, it gets really bumpy when you have coaching transitions. These are somebody who didn't necessarily recruit you. It's not like everything is unusual that it might have some hiccups as Steve Sarkisian gets things going. But they have a 4-5 record going into the weekend and a remaining schedule of Kansas at home, West Virginia on the road, and Kansas State also at home. You have to win 2. One of them is Kansas, but with West Virginia and Kansas State as the last 2 games there, and maybe I shouldn't even take Kansas as a gimme, but Texas Longhorns, 4-5, bowl or no bowl.
I'll be bold. I'm going to say bowl.
I mean,
is that bold? Maybe it's not bold. Yeah, they're going to beat Kansas.
So,
oh my goodness! Imagine if they didn't, though.
Hey, it wouldn't be the first. I don't think it's a guarantee, but I think that it happens a lot more often than it doesn't. I would pick, I would bet on them going to a bowl game. I don't think it's a guarantee, but I mean, what are they?
Tom's a yes.
They're a 30-point favorite.
Yeah, they're going to beat Kansas. Let's not be stupid. So they're really 5-5. And then you've got at West Virginia, which is not easy. West Virginia on the road is tough for everybody, even if West Virginia's not great. And then you've got Kansas State at home. And we've seen Kansas State could be a big pain in the butt too. But I don't want to, obviously, Texas is not where it's supposed to be. But they've lost 4 in a row. But let's look at the 4 teams they've lost to. It was Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Iowa State. They lost to the 4 best teams in the conference this year. Now, you'd like to see Texas being one of those teams and beating them, but that's just not the situation. They got off to a good start. Maybe it kind of raised our expectations for what they're expecting too soon. And then just all the stuff behind the scenes, like the video of the coach yelling at the players on the bus. Good. Because if my team's lost 4 in a row and they're not upset about it, I'd be yelling at them too. And
you know who looks bad there?
The player
the guy who recorded it.
Yeah,
exactly. What the hell is that?
Because, man, you can't let the idea that it's okay to lose seep into the locker room, because then that just is what happens. So every coach in America should be doing that if he sees their team acting like that after a 4 straight loss, especially when you just got your ass kicked by 23 points. So I don't know. Like, that's the weird thing. It's like, I don't know right now. There's clearly some fractions between this new staff and some of the older players on the roster. I don't know how that's going to work out, but just from a talent perspective, I feel like this team's going to get to a bowl game.
Kansas State at home is not like that. That is the danger zone. It's you win against Kansas. Maybe you go and you do take that L to West Virginia. That Texas team is 5-6 playing against Kansas State at home in the final game of the season. I don't like those vibes at all. Like, get it done at West Virginia. I'm going to say bowl, but let me say get it done at West Virginia, because if you come home with 5 wins for that final game of the season, I'm taking the Wildcats all day. I'll say bowl, but barely. What do you think? Maybe bowl?
Danny or Chip took bowl.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you take, bud?
I took bowl. West Virginia's
the
offense
culture is a
trash
problem.
Right
The culture is a problem. The whole Bo Davis thing was awesome that he was doing it. Should have been a player that should have been yelling at the other players for cutting up after a game. The fact that there was a player on there filming it was a massive problem. Like, there is a culture problem. You had receiver, yelling at coaches, then transfers a week later. Like, and I give them credit because the coaches, I do think, are trying to weed out the issues that they do have. Culture problem, are you going to be able to, I think it's not that dissimilar to the Gators. Like, it depends on, are they going to get the buy-in from the younger guys that are left over, or are they going to get kind of everybody feeling sorry for themselves? Well, this isn't the coach that we signed up for, and he's trying to come in here and tell us what to do. I don't know. I'll say bowl just because you have to feel like it matters to them, but man, I think it's going to be dicey.
I'll tell you what, if they do make that bowl game, I am fading the Longhorns in that bowl. Actually, I want Texas in the postseason. I want Florida in the postseason. I want all these teams that we're wondering whether or not they're going to quit. I want to be able to jump on the other side on the Big Ten team that's going to want it so much more when they play against them in the bowl season.
We do bowl locks, don't we?
Yes.
Oh, I am horrendous in pregame bowl locks. Fade the hell out of me on that. Like, I'm very confident what I do pregame, but like I don't bet a single thing pregame in bowls unless I like get some insider info somebody's out. For me, it's all live betting.
That's what makes betting bowl games fun.
Psychology season. Barton Simmons, he would always say, all of us are armchair psychologists. Who wants it more? And I like it.
Favorite live bet ever. West Virginia, Will Greer's announced is out. I knew who the backup was in that game. I knew he couldn't play at all. I was like, okay, yeah, this is we're unloading here.
That's your favorite live bet ever?
Against Syracuse in the bowl game. Oh yeah. Because like I could take him on. I could take Syracuse on the alt line and just. I knew the kid just could not play. It was not a D1 caliber kid.
All right, Steve Sarkisian, recent hire, not hot seat, but another job. Let's turn our attention out to Westwood and UCLA, because Chip Kelly and the Bruins are 5-4, and look, the remaining schedule is favorable because you're playing against Colorado, USC, and Cal. Those are all bottom half of the Pac-12 type teams, and you only got to win one more game. But the quality of performance from the Bruins has been really frustrating. If you were in the camp of believing that this is going to be a team that competes for the Pac-12 South Championship. So, bowl or no bowl, And I guess, this is the same, like we're putting Chip Kelly in that, Dan Mullen kind of position. Like, hey, so where's your roster feel about you? Because finishing strong and being able to be 8-4 and in the postseason, that's the kind of thing that has us looking back and forgetting about this midseason slide that the Bruins have had. Because 8-4, especially compared to the records that UCLA has had prior to this, looks like the improvement that we wanted to see. You lose them all. You miss the postseason. I think we might be looking for a new head coach at UCLA, given all the investment that has been made into that and the lack of production. Where do you fall on the Bruins? 5-4, Colorado, USC, and Cal, bowl or no bowl?
Bowl, 1,000%.
Bowl, easy.
All right.
I think it
Lock
should be
City.
bowl or better bowl. Like, do you
Yeah.
think that, do you lean towards the 8 wins or do you lean towards they 1 and 2 and limp in? I think a bowl is a lock. I think it's just what bowl are you going to? And I do think for Chip Kelly, it could go a long way to going 8-4, to gaining him some firm support from not only the players, but recruiting and the, boosters, all of it. So I think it's kind of critical that he does win out. And I think he can.
Yeah, I
They've lost to two good teams. Like Utah may be the best team in the Pac-12, and they went toe-to-toe with Oregon. Like I don't think there's any shame in losing those 2 games. And so I think they'll win out.
Yeah, I think they probably finished 7-5, but I think 8-4 is a lot more likely than 6-6.
All right. Some confidence for the Bruins. You love to see it. Let's open the board. I sent a whole bunch of like almost nearly 24 potential teams in that 4-5, 5-4 type range. What stands out as a team that you want to take a survey of the group on?
How about Washington?
Washington is 4-5. The remaining schedule is Arizona State at home, at Colorado, Washington State, Apple Cup on the road. 2 at home, 1 on the road, but Arizona State and Washington State absolutely losable. I say no bowl.
I think it's a coin flip, but it's one of those situations where it's like all the crap that's going on off the field right now. Like Jimmy Lake is suspended for the Arizona State game. John Wilner, who's as tapped into the Pac-12 as anybody in the country as far as a media aspect, tweeted yesterday his opinion. Wasn't reporting it. He was making prediction that Jimmy Lake will not coach another game at Washington and Justin Wilcox will leave Cal to take over the Washington job. So that's one of those strange things that you have to keep track of. But because of all that, yeah, I'm going to lean towards no bowl.
I mean, I'm going to lean towards bowl very slightly, but I mean, Arizona State is pretty unpredictable this year. Colorado is getting better, I guess. I'll go bowl very slightly. This is probably the one that loses me this game, but I'll go ahead and go bowl.
I think Colorado's the win. I think the other 2 are the losses, and they finish 5-7.
I see. The thing with me is that Wazoo game, they've dominated Wazoo. You know what it is? So it's like, but that was also like Jimmy Lake and Pete Kwiatkowski would talk about Mike Leach's offense. It's like, well, he never changes anything. So it's the easiest game to prepare for every season. But Mike Leach is gone. So maybe now Wazoo's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to deal with. I don't know. I feel like mathematically they're more likely to make it. It's just with everything going on, I don't think they're going to make it.
I'll say they don't make it either. I'm gonna say they get 1. I think they finished 1 and 2.
All right, so I'm lone wolf in that one. By the way, on the Wilcox thing, I think he'd be a great hire for them.
Heck yeah.
But you cannot let him to take Musgrave as his OC. Like, you got to get somebody who runs a more college style offense. Like, that's been the reason he hasn't gotten jobs at Cal, because they just can't score any points. You just had this with Jimmy Lake for 2 years in a row.
Washington and Arizona State. I'm worried that Jimmy Lake not being on the sideline is going to hurt it. But boy, that has a 37-point total if I've ever seen one. Oh my goodness. It's like, was it Arizona State favored by like 20, but an over under of 44 or something stupid like that? Maybe it's 13.5. 20 might be a little bit too aggressive on that one. All right. What about any others that stand out?
What about LSU?
LSU has a remaining schedule of Arkansas, ULM, and Texas A&M. 4-5 is their record. ULM's been playing better. Hey, Warhawks been playing better. but I think that's a win for the Tigers. That would get them to 5. A&M's probably a loss.
So do they beat Arkansas?
No bowl.
My numbers say bowl, but I'm going no bowl because I do think Arkansas will beat them, and I don't think they're going to be able to pull it out against A&M.
Danny?
You guys don't think they'll beat Arkansas?
No, I bet Arkansas. I think LSU secondary is going to get exposed here.
I'll say, I don't know. I'll say bowl. I'm going to take the other side. I was pretty impressed with the fight against Bama. Maybe I'm sucked into that one. I'm going to say yes.
You got any Max Johnson transfer intel for us here? They're giving more reps to Nussmeier. It seems like a quarterback competition. You got any kind of you got any intel
reach
for us
out
here?
to my guy. I'll have to reach out to Big Bad Brad, the TikTok sensation. Have you guys seen him?
No.
He's doing trick shots out there.
Tell Brad that I know a school in Illinois that could use a QB.
Hey, I'm going to tell Brad, which I probably don't have to tell him. There's a school that he attended that could use a Max Johnson. I would absolutely take him in a heartbeat.
Why
with all due respect to Illinois,
when you can go to Illinois? Come on.
That's true.
2-0 against ranked teams.
You know what? I might have to get on this. I might see if we can get something going.
All right. What about Syracuse?
I got one for you.
Okay.
I mean, are we going to be playing the Dino drop?
Yep.
At the end of the season, 5-4 with on the road Louisville, then on the road NC State, home against Pitt. Do they get one more?
Oh man.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Does it have to be this weekend?
No.
So you think they could go to NC State and win, or you think they could beat Pitt?
Correct.
I think NC State is very tough for them to
They've
win.
been fighting.
Yeah.
You know what's total BS, by the way?
What?
Devin Leary getting left off the Davey O'Brien Award Final 20. That dude is like the throws he was
Ballin'.
making. He's a stud.
He did.
Like, he'll be one of the best kids in that 2019 QB class. Watch.
I hope it runs in the family.
So I think that
committed to Illinois.
The NC State game is a little bit tricky for NC State because you're coming right on the heels of the Wake game, which means everything. So where are you going to get from the Wolfpack? I think that hinges on the result in Winston-Salem in ways that could be good or bad. And then what if Pitt already has the Coastal locked up when it shows up to the Carrier Dome? Yep, that could be a potential spot where you're able to get the Panthers. Those two teams have played some weird, strange games where I think that Syracuse, it doesn't have to be this weekend, though I agree that the odds probably favor getting it done this weekend against Louisville, a team which also needs it as the Cards are 4-5 with Syracuse, Duke, and Kentucky left.
Yeah, I'll say they get there. I'm just not incredibly confident in it.
That's a sweep, man. I'm going with him as well. Also, Pitt is no stranger to giving up explosive runs on the ground.
True.
That's basically the only way that Syracuse scores. So, their defense is pretty solid. The offense is still very one-dimensional. Louisville will be the interesting one, though. I'm very curious to see, how hard do they keep playing?
Do you have them on quit alert?
Yeah.
Wow.
Just from reading some tea leaves from some media members I follow on Twitter. They're a little suspect about what's going on there. So I'll be betting some Syracuse alt line this weekend just in case Louisville quits and Syracuse blows their ass out.
Virginia Tech head coach Scott Satterfield.
Does 4-5 at Louisville get you a conversation for the Hokies job? My guess is Napier for that job.
Yeah, that's Virginia Tech fans. Who are you after? Who do you want? Who's the guy that's been the name that everybody at Virginia Tech has just decided is the guy, and we must have this guy?
Gary Patterson. Let's go.
Oh, that would be interesting. I would take it all day. But that's why I thought Shane Beamer, that's why I thought it was interesting, because I would think there would be the whole family ties. And if he has a big year at South Carolina, even though it's 1 year, you get him early while he's hot,
We'll see.
I'm still bothered by Bud's Devin Leary news. I was not aware of that. The dude is balling. The fact that he's not one of the top. Is this when they whittle it down to how many, or is this still when they have 20?
He's down to 20, Danny. I saw on Twitter yesterday. I couldn't believe it.
That's pretty ridiculous.
He's really pretty damn good. And like he's not making these BS throws. Like he's making big time NFL style throws.
So you're going to take Frank Harris off the list?
Can we get the list? Like Anthony Brown is on the list. Anthony Brown is on this list, and Oregon wins every game it wins in spite of him.
Yeah,
right.
Anthony Brown's on that list because of the Ohio State game. That's it.
But he didn't even do that much, did he?
No, I know, but he played well in the game, and he hasn't really been great since. But I think most people are just like, he played well against Ohio State, led him to a big win on the road. Here's one I think is a true coin flip. USC.
USC is 4-5. The remaining schedule is at Cal, UCLA at home, and BYU at home.
That Cal game was postponed until December 4th, so that is actually their last game now.
Oh, they are going to play that?
Yeah.
How many of these Cal kids quit and transfer?
I don't know, but shout out to USC for doing that, because they could have easily just taken the forfeit and helped them get to the bowl game. But they like Coach said, Williams said, I'm not trying to get to a bowl game off a forfit. So
that's the benefit of having an interim coach who doesn't care about the long term. Like he doesn't need the bowl game to secure his job. He might like another week to impress
on the field. Damn right.
I'm gonna say no bowl. I think it's wrapped. I think USC loses to UCLA and BYU, and then goes out there to play for the spirit of the game on the championship Saturday in a weird time slot.
I do feel like BYU is probably the toughest of those three games, because as we've gone over, USC struggles with physical teams and BYU is a physical team. The problem is defensively, BYU is not been great. I'm going to lean yes, slightly, like 52%.
Yeah, I'm at like 45%, so it's a no for me, but again, pretty slight.
Danny?
I'm going to say no. I think they lose to UCLA and BYU. We were talking about UCLA. I'm more bullish on UCLA winning out and USC losing. BYU is a good team. Like BYU is sitting there. That's their Super Bowl type feel. I think they've got all the momentum.
All right. Any others that we want to spotlight before we hit the break and hit a couple mailbag questions?
Illinois 100% going bowling.
Illinois, had to include them on the watch list on the Davey O'Brien.
No, we start the show with like Florida State and it's 3% chance, but we can't even talk about Illinois' chances.
All right, I'll give Illinois a 10% chance.
Damn straight. They're going to take.
I'll give them 7.
It all depends on if Iowa's still ranked when they play them. If Iowa's still ranked, they're going bowling because they're going to win that game.
They've got a game in hand. I mean, it's just it's a position where I could see Iowa and Northwestern as wins. I say Illinois bowl.
Damn straight.
Put it on the dock. Let's go.
If we did this conversation preseason, it was like Illinois is 4-6, and these two teams are still on the slate, Tom would have told us it was a negative percentage. Like there's
yes.
But then we've seen Iowa and Northwestern, and we understand that to win both of those games, you just got to find a way to 17.
Yeah, and also, like, aside from the Wisconsin game, even in the games Illinois has lost, they've been competitive in every single game, which is a huge change from what we've seen from that team most in the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Defense has been all right.
It's been good.
By the way, I'm tracking this very closely. We have a very tight race for the worst offense in the Power 5 this year between Vandy, Kansas, and Northwestern. All within like half a point in SP plus. Come down to the wire, man. Pat Fitzgerald teams don't score.
Coming up on the other side, opening up the big old bag of mail for some questions on staff turnover. Who has been more disappointing, Florida or Washington? A couple teams we've discussed already. And how long does it take to overhaul the roster of an average Power 5 team? Next. All right, this first question comes from Trent. Gents, this is the go-to CFB podcast for content and entertainment. 2 questions. Number 1, I was in the stadium as a UF student in '94 when I watched the choke at Doak unfold. But the question is, what was the conversation in the huddle to go for 2 and the win, considering Florida defense on the field the entire fourth quarter? And then number 2, with Mullen replacing staff, do you think it will be more of a Tom Herman or a Brian Kelly result? And I guess that would be Tom Herman changing over all his staff the year before getting fired. Brian Kelly doing staff changes after the 2016 4-8 season that have gotten him in the college football playoff 2 times in 3 years. So I like your reference, Trent. But first, we got to go back to story time from the Knowles. Danny?
All right, so quickly, choke at Doak, 31-3, came back. I'll give you the rundown of what happened because there was no in the huddle conversation. But in between series, when we had cut the lead to 14, it was kind of, you started feeling something special was going to happen. And Mark Richt told me when I came over and put the headsets on, I talked to him, he was up in the booth. He said, when we get to within 1, we're going to go for 2. We're going to go for the win. It was no doubt. And we were going to run 30 trap, which was a little inside trap to Zach Crockett, our fullback, who was, unbelievable back, big dude, who had scored on the first touchdown of the comeback to make it 31-10. So in my mind, we were going for it. Like, we were going to go for the win the whole time. And that was kind of the mindset. I already knew the play, so it wouldn't be it would be efficient. We knew exactly what we were going to do. So when Rock Preston, my running back, scored to make it 31-30, I'm actually running because the crowd's going nuts. Everybody's celebrating. And I'm thinking, no, we're going to win this thing. So I'm trying to get everybody to stay on the field, like to get everybody's attention. Hey, wait, we got to go for 2. We're going for 2, keeping everybody on the field. And then like one of my offensive linemen like turned me and like showed me Coach Bowden, who was just going like this. And he was just had his one finger, which meant kick it. And he's like, kick it. And so I was like, oh, so I was kind of dejected. I was kind of bummed. And then we kicked the extra point to go for the tie. So Coach Bowden overruled Mark Richt in that situation, said, no. We came all the way back. We can't let it come up just 1 point short. And we actually got the ball back and got really close to either a Hail Mary or a super long field goal. Like, it would have been a 58, 59-yard field goal attempt. But your boy tried to scramble for a first down, which would have stopped the clock. And I came up about a half yard short, and we had no timeouts. And I slide, come up, and I'm trying to get everybody to spike it. And we spike it with -1, like negative half a second. It was, the clock had expired. So we ended. But I remember I was bummed. It took me a while to kind of, because I didn't want to tie. I wanted to go for 2, and I felt like we would have scored. But Coach Bowden was right, because I look back, like if I didn't have that game, like we wouldn't be getting questions about the choke at Doak. Like, and that's all I get talked about is the choke at Doak when I talk about my career at Florida State. And if we wouldn't have got it, and I don't know if people are looking at me the same as my career at Florida State.
So what do you think? Hey, Danny, I'll let you get first crack at how do you think this goes for Dan Mullen? Does this end up being staff changes that, rejuvenate his career and turn the Gators into SEC championship contenders? Or is this just the first in a maybe multiple year, maybe 2-year step of Dan Mullen's time with the Gators coming to an end?
I think it's really hard to answer this question without knowing who he gets, right? Because I think the turnover is going to be there clearly with the changes he's already announced. I think one valid question is, how appealing is this job to the type of coordinator that's really going to resonate with the fans and get everybody excited? Because if you're a coordinator that's really sought after, are you going to go somewhere where the heat that's there, that Dan, if you don't turn it around, that you might be out in the street looking for a job, and is your stock going to continue to be on the fly or be on the rise? But I think it's interesting because maybe there's a coach that absolutely does believe in himself. Hey, I'm going to fix it. And maybe I parlay it into another head job. So I think it depends on who he gets in there more than anything. And then we can answer that question. But like we talked about the Herman or Chip Kelly, what about the job Jim Harbaugh did? Like, Jim Harbaugh made a lot of changes and tough changes, and those have worked out pretty well so far. So I think it depends on who they actually bring in.
I agree with you. It's a really difficult question to answer without knowing who the coaches are. But I will say I'm leaning more towards Tom Herman, just simply because the Brian Kelly example stands out, because that's more the rarity where a coach overhauls the entire staff and philosophy behind a lot of the things that they do, and it works. Most of the time, it's like, no matter the intention, most of the time it still doesn't work. Like it's not so I think it can work because with the things, the structures in place there, with the desire to win in football, I think that as long as Dan Mullen's willing to do it, it could work because it's still Florida. You can recruit to Florida if things are right and you actually take an effort and put an effort forward to getting the talent there. But I don't know. I would lean more towards Herman just because I feel like that's the more common outcome.
The odds say Herman for sure.
Yeah. And I'm reading from Dan Mullen's own, like the way he's handling this, right? I mean, just it doesn't all line up towards like a total rejuvenation of spirit, a total rejuvenation of the trajectory of the program, the recruiting trail. You know, it's just I think this ends up being more of a Herman situation.
I guess the couple saving graces here. Number one, you do have Richardson, and Dan Mullen does develop quarterbacks well. I know he hurt himself dancing in the hotel before the South Carolina game, which is disappointing. That's not a joke, like he actually did, according to Mullen. If you develop him, everything could be like totally fine next year, right? Because I mean, Georgia loses a bunch, and I think he does have like serious ability. We were already talking about firing Grantham a long time ago, even before things got bad. So to me, it suggests he could be more than just a fall guy. He could have been an actual problem, right? That may lean you towards, hey, not Herman, but somebody that actually worked out. The one thing I'm not convinced this fixes, though, is does Mullen care about and emphasize recruiting with the top-down recruiting matters approach? That's the one thing that will really, I think, solve this or not solve this.
All right, let's just do we'll do one more. We've been bagging on Washington and Florida enough. We don't need to just add even more and I think this is a little bit more fun. By the way, should we reveal the mystery team that we forgot to reveal on Saturday night, or should we just continue to leave that as a running bit where listeners?
No, but
keep the bit because we might not talk about. Well, we will talk about him this week.
We talked about him yesterday,
and we just talked about him.
Yeah,
in the last 20 minutes.
The last question too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This mystery team will be unveiled on November 27th. on November 27th, the cover 3 mystery team.
Somebody put that in our calendar so that way we remember.
All right. This last question from W.R. Kane. I'm a lifelong Vanderbilt fan and started listening when Barton Simmons was hired there. Question. How long does it take to overhaul a roster for an average Power 5 team, and what specific characteristics do you like to see that tell you it's moving in the right direction?
There's really no set answer on this at all. And like the one set answer I would give you is that in the early signing period era, it is going to take longer because the vast majority of times your first little class you sign, you only have 2 or 3 weeks to put together, is going to suck, and you're going to get nothing from it. Even the guys that are doing well right now, look at Jimbo. His first class is terrible, right? Or if you did really poorly, your first class probably also kills you. See, Taggart or Morris there at Arkansas. Hitting on quarterback is really, really important, and that can speed up your timetable some, but that's difficult. We just talked about Josh Heupel hitting on Hooker. Heupel did not sign Hooker. Pruitt did. He transferred to Tennessee under Pruitt, and then Pruitt got the axe, and then Heupel went out and got Joe Mixon. So there's a huge luck component involved in this. If you want to look at factors that are within your control, I would say the most important one is, are you recruiting and beating out some of the teams that you expect to beat now, and maybe winning a battle or two against the teams that you expect to beat once you're good again, right? I'll use Norvell as an example. We have not had in the early signing period era, so 5 classes, a top 15 class for a team that didn't have like a brand new head coach, in year 0, year 1, that won 4 fewer games. They're 12th right now. So I made this point on Nolecast the other day, like they're recruiting at a historic level relative to on-field results. That would be something that would make me say, okay, this could be going in the right direction. But like, look at who you're beating look at who you're beating out for recruits, who wants your kids you're signing, and look for non-win-loss signs of roster improvement.
Yeah, I mean, there's no set way, but if you're a lifelong Vandy fan, I can relate in that I'm an Illinois fan, and we just, like Vandy, underwent a coaching change there as well. And just comparing like some early positive signs were in the last regime, Illinois would beat up on the teams it was supposed to beat up on, and it would lose to the teams it was supposed to lose to, and it would get its ass kicked by the teams that were supposed to kick its ass. sometimes they would have crazy fluky wins, like the Wisconsin, couple turnovers from Wisconsin late turned it around. They came back from a 25-point deficit at Michigan State thanks to some craziness to win that game, and then they go bowling. But typically those kind of wins were because of fluky results. This year's Illinois team, first of all, like you mentioned, Bud, recruiting wise, they're winning some battles within the state that they hadn't been winning in a while and against other Big Ten teams. That's a good sign. On the field, not only did they go to Penn State and beat Penn State and go to Minnesota and beat Minnesota, but there was no fluke to it. They dominated those games. The post-game win expectancy at Penn State was 87%. The post-game win expectancy at Minnesota was 75%. And in their losses, they're no longer getting blown out by the teams that are supposed to blow them out. So it's like signs like that. There's nothing definitive that makes you say, okay, this is where things are going to change. But there are little things that if you pay attention, you start to notice the difference, or you don't notice a difference. It kind of gives you a pretty good indicator of where it's more likely to go.
Gainey, you played for the Winners.
But I have no idea what you do, like what your hope is here for Vanderbilt. Because I was going to ask Bud, like, who are you supposed to be competing with for recruits at Vanderbilt? Like, what is your comp?
Ideally, Northwestern, Stanford. You are trying to go to some of those good academic private schools throughout the Southeast that places like a Stanford or Northwestern or Notre Dame go to. And you're not going to beat the Irish for a whole lot of kids, but can you beat the Irish on one or two kids who maybe like the more city atmosphere of Nashville? It's a pretty cool growing town. That's just a really, really hard job, man. I mean, you win 4 games at Vanderbilt. It's not one of those jobs where you control your own destiny, right? We talked about this, but like when Vanderbilt was good, they did every single thing right, basically, and then got extremely lucky with the other people in that division being down, which was out of their control. They have to just go and find under the radar kids and hit at a rate that some people would feel is unsustainable, right? You have to just be so damn good at talent identification and development and really understand, where do I need like fit guys and where do I need talent guys within my system?
I think that there's a modern model. And like the question, it introduced Vanderbilt fan, but also said an average Power 5 roster, and Vanderbilt's not your average Power 5 university. I think Michigan State is probably above your average just because of some of the built-in success and the tradition that's been there in East Lansing. But with 15 additions from the transfer portal, including the Heisman Trophy candidate Kenneth Walker, Mel Tucker has taken what I've started to call as like the college basketball Chris Beard approach to this, which is if I really believe enough in what I'm building here, what we've got in the locker room, what we've got on the coaching staff, we can welcome you in. We can find a fit for you and you can gel as part of this program. I think that is going to be as useful of a skill in all of college sports as we continue to have more freedom of player movement. But if you want to start to look for ways that you can speed up that process where the early signing period has extended it, then the Mel Tucker model of hitting on the transfer portal, I think, is something that a lot of coaches are going to fail to emulate and have it explode in their faces. But I think it's possible to be able to emulate that if you've got, again, everything, the foundationally, it's strong.
So I do want to, I agree with you completely, Chip. Michigan State really hit above its weight class in the transfer portal this year. I want to point out, by the way, that was not a program in shambles on the field. They were 30th in SP Plus in 2018. They were 42nd in 2019.
But all the good recruits had gotten kicked out. Like they had like 3 recruiting classes in a row where we were getting arrested, sexual assault charges. Like it was.
Well, the one class in particular was the one that was, it was like super hyped and it ended up, maybe they got those guys for a certain reason, like we talk about sometimes on here.
Weren't some of them Cass Tech guys? Like they were even coming from programs where normally you would expect them to go to Michigan State. It was just bad. I mean, just a rough hand.
I guess what I'm saying is like Michigan State right now is 22nd in SP Plus, right? Like I think they're maybe a little bit better than that. They're probably a top 20 type team this year, but they weren't coming from a program that was like 80th or 90th or even 70th. I mean, the years before Tucker came there, or what I say, 30th and 42nd. Like that's a pretty good base to start from. And they've hit in the transfer portal well, but they were existingly good along the lines of scrimmage. And I think last year was sort of a wash year because he took over so late. So it's like they did things to improve it. But one of the reasons I like them going into this year and bet they're over was I thought they had a pretty good bones on that roster from D'Antonio.
Guys, well, I promised a dude I'd get in one of his questions. He DM'd me on Instagram.
Yeah, I got time.
Let me get it real quick because I promised him. All right. It's not this one. All right, because I did get. Here we go. My question is, as a depressed Tech fan, do you see a light at the end of the Georgia Tech tunnel? I keep hearing from the staff we are trending in the right direction, but the wins seem to be lagging behind. Was the talent gap really that drastic that 3 to 4 3-win seasons were inevitable?
Well, losing to Northern Illinois was a bad start to the season, which you already had one of the toughest schedules in the entire country. By a lot of metrics, Georgia Tech was going to be probably destined for 5-7 or something along those lines, just because the schedule was really, really difficult. You've got Georgia, you've got Notre Dame. You get Clemson every single season. So you're thinking if they lose all of them, it's going to be another 3-9 season and you're disappointed. I think that you probably believe the coaching staff. You give it another year before you get angry.
I think when you transition off that type of offense, you really should give them the benefit of the doubt. But are they actually winning recruiting battles in that state at a high rate? This year they have a top 25 class. That's pretty good. We know
last year they had a top 25 class too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like he's improving the recruiting talent there some. If you want to go with some red flags, defensively, Georgia Tech with the defensive head coach, not good. They're 72nd on defense. You know, that's not great. But I will point out, like when he took over there, he took over 19. Chip.
Yes.
Yeah, 19 was his first year.
Yeah.
So they were 111th in SP Plus that year. Like they were just terrible. I do think it's going to take quite a bit of time. But if things don't go well, there are a lot of coaches who will be intrigued enough by that Atlanta market that they want to try that thing.
Yeah. I think if I'm a Georgia Tech fan, the one thing, like you mentioned, Chip, that schedule, like when Notre Dame's on there and added to the Georgia Clemson game, that's just going to be tough every single year. But I think that what you'd like to see is improvement within the conference. And you haven't really seen that yet. Like it was 2-6 in year one, it's 3-6 last year, and it's 2-5 right now. So it's like, I feel like next year I would like to see at least 4-4 in conference play. And then maybe there's a sign that we're moving in the right direction.
But I mean, 33-30 against Miami, you were right there. 48-40 against Virginia, you were right there. You beat North Carolina. Like Pitt embarrassed you, but I mean that was
toe with Clemson early when we didn't know.
Yeah,
yeah.
I will say,
lose
like
big, lose close, win big.
Miami being that close was a fluke. They got outgained by 250 yards. Like that's the one I push back on. Like that was not a competitive game from a down-to-down standpoint. They just got extremely lucky with turnover touchdowns. But the rest of them I agree with.
They still count the same.
But it's not repeatable skill. It's not showing improvement. It's fluke.
But they still count this. I'm just kidding.
Sure. Yeah, no, you're right.
All right. Reminder, 11 a.m. on Thursday. It's going to be your locks that you need for the weekend. Come and get them. You want them. You need them. You can watch live, youtube.com/cover3. Go and smash that notification bell so that you can get an alert every single time that we go live. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Danny Cannell. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen.